Hello and welcome to the focal events Dirty Reiver Diaries. Your hosts today are Brian Singleton and Neil Atkinson.
Hi Neil, how are you today?
Very good, thank you. Very good indeed. What's new and exciting with you?
Oh, not a lot really, but just a month on from Dirty Reiver, and things are starting to settle down on the mop-up from the event, and looking very much forward to starting the planning all over again for next year.
When you say looking forward to, it's actually already started, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got a date. What date have we got, Neil, this for 2025?
It's going to be the weekend after Easter weekend. So it's going to be this Saturday, the 26th of April. Obviously, the event village will be open on the Friday, the 25th.
Yeah.
But the event itself will be on the 26th of April. And that's a big scoop. Look at that. We've never put the date out so early, have we?
Yeah, I never knew that either. So we'll have all the usual on the 25th with the Expo Village open, registration open, the normal with the food, the bar, and lots of social rides. And hopefully we'll have some interesting characters along to lead some of those. But yeah, looking back to last year, Friday was great. We had we nailed it with the weather. It was fantastic. It was it was good. It was good weather, and that led to some pretty fast times, I think.
It did actually, yeah, it did. And just flipping back to that Friday, because it was our first year that we opened at 10 o'clock in the morning. I think, the feedback that we've got was brilliant from brands and from riders, saying it was such a chilled out day that they could learn more and just go out on social rides. And the social ride with Johan Moseo, how many people were on that?
There must have been over 100. It was almost on right, wasn't it?
We should turn that into an event as well. But yeah, going onto the Saturday itself, yeah, there were some fast times out there. I think the fastest, in fact, do you know what the fastest time was, Brian?
I don't know in the men's. I know that I know the women's. The women's, Maddy went round in something like 7:38, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the men were about 6:28, 38, something like that. So
that's we'll go more into detail about that with Maddy next, don't we?
Yeah, spoiler alert there. We are going to be chatting to Maddy Nutt as part of this podcast, and yeah, so our next Dirty Reiver Diary is Maddy Nutt. It's the post event mop up, and we thought it'd be nice to have a chat with her about her experiences, just generally on gravel and her travels, but also looking back at the Reiver, what she thought of the event, any tips and information she can pass on to people. So yeah, let's tune in to see what Maddy has to say. This is going to be on the Panaracer Dirty Reiver Diaries.
Awesome.
So it'll go out on Dirty Reiver and beyond. So I've actually started recording, so that's part of the recording now.
Perfect.
Right, okay. I'll just hold a second or two so I can see where it's at. Hi, Maddy. Welcome to the Panaracer Dirty Reiver Diaries. How are you today?
I am very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very good, and it's so nice to see you. I know you you've got a very busy schedule of gravel events taking place at the moment. You've just been up in Scotland to the Gralloch, and what's next on your calendar?
That's a good question. So I was actually meant to be going to Rwanda for a UCI race called Ribble Collective. That got cancelled very last minute, but I'd already booked my flights and I've got ongoing flights to then do a UCI race in Kenya. So I'm going to Rwanda, going to do an altitude training camp. I'm actually going to Spain tomorrow, but that's for a wedding. But I'm bringing a gravel bike with me because it's 4 days and I can't not ride a bike for 4 days.
And Spain's such a good place to ride your bike, isn't it?
No, exactly. I had a look on, this is a bit sad, but I went on Strava and looked at heat maps in the area where the wedding is, and I had a look and there's loads of gravel near the wedding. So I was like, I can't not bring, the wedding doesn't start till 1 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah. Loads of time.
Exactly. I'm going to chill the rest of the day. I might as well ride all morning. Yeah. a huge energy deficit to eat a ridiculous amount at the wedding.
So you go to these, you know, obviously you've reeled off some, you know, pretty exotic locations there for events. What is it that's inspired you to do this? Is it the gravel itself? Is that confirmed?
This is a good question. I think part of it's the travel. Like, I absolutely love to travel and see more of the world. I just enjoy that whole experience of like traveling to new places, like learning a bit about the culture, the food, meeting people from there. And then the other thing is the gravel. Like, I do just love riding a gravel bike. Like, I love riding off road. I think it's a great adventure. You can get to places that you just can't get when you're on the road.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just the people I've met through it, the places I've got to go have just been amazing. And I've kind of just I don't really know how it started. I did Grinduro, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. It was my first ever time I ever rode a gravel bike. Like, I'd never even ridden a gravel bike before. And I kind of just since then, even though I didn't enjoy it and I cried because it was really technical and I'd never ridden off road, I've just kind of fallen down a slippery slope where I've now ended up, basically racing my gravel bike full time.
And then prior to that, you were riding on the road. Was that right?
So I first got a bike 6 years ago, this month, I think. So I got a bike 6 years ago. I had a bike when I was younger, when I was a kid, but and I had a little road bike that actually got stolen, and then I didn't have a bike. But I got a bike 6 years ago, so I was 20, and I started doing triathlon. So I was doing a bit of triathlon first, and then I just caught myself just only wanting to ride my bike. I really enjoy running. Like, I do enjoy running. I don't think any triathlete enjoys swimming, but I just found that I just wanted to ride like every day. And it got to a point where I was, wanting to ride more and more. And then I did a few like local crit races, local road races. But I'd never say that I was like properly a road racer. I think I've actually come at gravel at the same time as I really got into road racing, because I did Grinduro. So my first ever gravel race, well, my first ever time on a gravel bike, which was a race, at about the time I started doing a few little crits.
Yeah.
So it was about the same time. And then I just did both, and I was just a lot better at gravel, and it suited me a lot more physiologically, and I enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah.
But to be honest, you're still racing on the road, though, aren't you? Because last year you were in Lincoln Grand Prix.
So last year I did Lincoln Grand Prix, but I did say when I did that and I finished it, I went, this is my last road race. So I haven't done a road race this year. I think I actually would be, I said this the other day, I was like, I'd be really interested to do a road race with my current fitness, because I'm actually like way fitter than I was when I did Lincoln this time last year.
Yeah.
But I just think my strengths don't suit road racing. So I don't have very good upper end power. Like, I'm basically just like a diesel engine. So unless I got in a brake, which I don't have the power to get into a brake, I don't think I'd ever get a particularly strong road result. I think it would have to be a really hard road race that was very attritional and most people were dropped for me to get a good result. So yeah, I also don't like how unsafe road racing feels.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that quite often people say about gravel. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you fall off your bike on gravel, it can be quite nasty. But the fact that it's kind of traffic free, you've got a bit more space. I think that definitely helps make gravel feel like it's a bit safer, for sure. I
also find with gravel, if you crash, it's normally your fault. And I prefer that. Like, I would prefer to have responsibility over my own safety. Whereas in road racing, I'm constantly anxious about other people's riding. Yeah. And gravel, you have some races where you start in a big bunch, but typically you're in a smaller bunch. Typically, to be in a gravel race, someone has to be technical enough to ride off-road to sign up to the race.
Yeah.
So the riders tend to be more skilled.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. And to be honest with you, I'd not thought of it from that point of view. I mean, you're obviously riding at the kind of sharp end of these events. So just tell us a little bit more, obviously, how is it riding in those groups at the front of the race?
It can be pretty hectic. It's definitely quite high intensity. I mean, gravel racing is really interesting in terms of just the how it goes ahead, like what happens in terms of the effort. So like road racing, you obviously have like moments of like real chill and calm, and like sometimes you get a bit bored, you have a chit chat, and then they're like sudden surges and you've got to react. Gravel racing, the way I describe it is, I don't think I've ever done a gravel race that has not gone off ludicrously hard, too hard. It goes off ludicrously hard. You do more or less, not necessarily a max effort, but close to max effort.
Right.
Probably for between 10 to 20 minutes, normally for the length of the first climb, because most gravel races start with a climb to split everyone up. You then continue to push, and you do not stop pushing until the end of the race unless you blow.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Is how I would describe the effort. So like at the front end, you're like pushing and like trying to hold the wheels and hold in there for as long as you can, and you're just trying to whittle down the group and just like use the fact that gravel's really attritional and people are going to be splitting out the back. And then as soon as you've got a group, it's just like, can I stick in here until the end of the race?
Is there a lot of chit chat that goes on in the front groups, or is it deadly quiet, or is it come through, it's your turn at the front, or is it just nothing at all?
Depends on the race. Like I've said, I've definitely had some events where like, and races where we have spoken, but there are some times where it is silent. It depends. Like I think road racing people are more vocal. Like people, if you're in a break, people are going to talk to you and tell you to take a turn. I'd say gravel racing on the whole, maybe not so, but it also just depends on who you are as a rider. Like I'm quite quiet as a rider. Like I'm pretty chatty off the bike, but in a race,
I've never realised.
Yeah, I'm not very bossy in a race. I probably should be bossier. I realised this on the weekend because at the Gralloch, which is a UCI event that was in Scotland, I was in a group of, I think it was 6 riders. To be honest, there could have been 7 because there were a few girls who did not appear in front of, I did not see them, and they were in that group the whole race, more or less.
Right.
And I was by the end, I was pretty much the only person who was sitting on the front. There was one other girl who was a bit, and I wanted to like shout at them and be like, come on, like if you're going to ride in this group, like you need to take a turn. I need like some time off the front.
Yeah.
And I just don't have it within me to be
You're too nice, Maddy, too nice.
I think sometimes in those contexts I am.
So how does the terrain, I mean, obviously, you know, you think of a road race, you think you've got half or full width of the road, and you know, you've got therefore got, you know, an unlimited number of lines to take. But obviously on a gravel event, you're probably limited in that there might be you know, 1 or 2 lines on the trail. How does that affect? That must surely affect how you ride and that ability to communicate, because you're more lined out rather than riding together.
So it's a really interesting question. I think the women race differently to the men. So in that sense, I've like spoken to quite a few of my male friends who are gravel racers recently, and they found that as more male road riders are coming to gravel, they're taking the way they ride on the road into gravel, and it's actually really dangerous. So they're riding too close. Right. And like if someone hits like a pothole or a rock, and like you're riding on gravel, of course you're going to hit obstacles and things like that. It's actually causing quite a lot of crashes at the moment because people are too close and they're drafting way too close to the wheel. Whereas I'd say in the women's field, I've not really experienced that or noticed that women are riding too close together. We do leave a bit more of a gap.
Yeah.
And I'd also say that in terms of like lines and following lines, if I'm in a race and in my group of riders that I know and I can trust, then I will ride closer to them. And like, I will trust their lines and judgments into bits. But for example, on the weekend, there were moments, there was actually one girl in my group who was an ex-teammate of mine. And if she was in front of me, I would like ride right on her wheel and I'd trust her lines because she's an ex-GB mountain biker. Like I completely trust her descending skills. But there were other girls in the group where I would actually prefer to sit in the wind or like slightly off their wheel because I don't know them. And like, I don't want to risk bringing everyone down or like all of us going down. So it does depend. I'd also say it impacts the dynamics of the race in the sense of, say, for example, Gralloch, I knew the course from last year and I knew that it turned into a double track at one point. So in that double track bit, I wanted to be at the front of the group I was in because I knew that I would want to pick which line, which side of the double track I wanted to be on. Sometimes it does affect things like that. Like if there's a single track, you attack before the single track so that you're getting in there first.
No, that is a really useful insight, and it kind of leads us naturally onto you know, kind of looking at the fact that, you know, I think gravel is unique. It's obviously in its infancy, the gravel racing scene, but it is unique in that we get a field of riders, which is obviously or more than usually, it's mixed with sometimes male and female riders lining up together. And certainly that's the instance in the Dirty Reiver. So I just wanted to ask you, as obviously as a rider again at that kind of sharp end of things, what is it like then when you're lining up and you're surrounded by, kind of male riders, elite riders, and how does that affect, the potential outcome of an event?
So it's a really interesting question. I find race dependent. For me, I like riding with the men and racing with the men at some events. There are other races where I prefer to have a separate start.
Yeah.
So the whole experience is completely different. And that's why I think it's very race dependent, whether it suits the race or not. So for example, a race where I'd want to line up and start with the men, for like Migration Gravel race in Kenya, it's such a small field that I wouldn't want a separate start, because then there's a high chance that I'm going to be spending the entire day on my own, which is pretty soul destroying when you're riding like 180 kilometer through the Masai Mara, and you could be riding with people. And that's the kind of event where you do chat your way around, because it's 4 days, it's slightly lower intensity. A race like a UCI race, I do think it's really important that we have separate starts. And that's because the amount of races I've done where we've had mass start with the men and the race result has been really impacted by the men. It's like, I would say that I could tell you very few races where my results not been impacted by men being in the race. That I find that really frustrating as a female racer, because the men don't have that. Like, no one's impacting the men's race, because at the front of the men's race, there's no one faster than the men to be dragging men further forward. Whereas in the women's field, we have races where like men work for women. I've been in races where like someone's had a boyfriend tow them around. That's like quite a common thing to happen in gravel racing. And even just like accidentally, like a man has a puncture and then drags someone through to a further forward group, like that kind of thing happens all the time. So it's really good when we get like our own race.
I think again, one of the things about gravel is it's nice that everybody's riding the same course, everyone's riding the same distance, but I think it's also, and potentially the same start, but I think it's also important that having those large numbers of mixed competitors all setting off at the same time doesn't have a negative impact on a potential result. So, again, I noticed, kind of going back to the event at the weekend, that, the women elite were probably, nearly 2 hours after the men elite, but they were very quickly probably catching up some of the male age categories. And that obviously will have some impact on kind of the women riding. I mean, I know when they came past me and they were picking their way through groups of men. What's your experience of that, Maddy? I mean, how are you finding that way of starting?
I actually quite enjoyed it. I was worried when they initially suggested it, that because I think we started like 45 minutes behind the last category of older men, maybe a bit less in the end because they were slightly delayed on the starts for the men. And I was worried that we'd be like catching and then not able to get through. My actual experience was there were only a few moments where like I actually had to navigate round older men. Like a lot of the time they completely moved out of the way. And actually there was a weird positive experience that I didn't expect, which was that all of these older men were really excited about the fast women coming past them and then were cheering on the race. So like actually, rather than it being negative and us being like, oh, get out the way, like, and then affecting our race, there was this whole nice element of, because clearly the men at the back of the age group race were not competing, and they were just riding, or they weren't riding at a similar pace at all. There was a lot of like, yeah, go on, or like, you're going so well. I even had like people cheer for me, and I was like, oh, thank you.
So you had time to acknowledge and say, oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I did. I had a couple of people being like, go on, Maddy, and I'd be like, oh, thank you.
Brilliant. So obviously this is a Panaracer Dirty Reiver Diary. It'd be nice just to sort of reflect on your experiences of the Dirty Reiver, Maddy. And just for those of you who perhaps haven't come across Maddy before, Maddy rides for the Ribble Collective, and Yeah, you've kind of got other brands supporting you as well, Maddy. Who else have you got that's helping you out at the moment?
So Ribble and Panaracer and Velocio are like my main sponsors.
Yep.
And then I also partner with a few other brands. So Puckles Wheels, OT Nutrition.
Yeah.
I've got a bike shop near me called Giro that does all my mechanics.
Okay. Yeah.
Chimney Fire Coffee, Seller Italia Saddles. I don't want to miss anyone. Wahoo. I have quite a few partners that support me, but my main sponsors are Ribble, Panaracer, and Velocio.
Yeah, and I think quite a few of the brands that you work with kind of support the event, the Dirty Reiver, anyway. So
yeah, quite a few did. I was like, this is perfect for me. It's like 5 sponsors at one event.
Yeah, so tell us about your Dirty Reiver. I mean, you went around in a blistering time. I seem to remember on the day you said about 7:45, but I think you might have been underselling yourself there. Was it not 7:38 that you went round in?
So the time I told you was my Wahoo, which I started before the time section started. Okay. So that would be why.
Right. Okay. So a blistering 7:38. I mean, I'd be
very good.
I'd be super stoked to drive. We drove the course actually, Maddy. I'll confess to this. We drove the course this year just to check it out and to share with one of our team who was going to be setting it out. How long did it take us to drive round, Neil?
I think it was about 10 hours.
No.
To be honest with you, I think in actual fact, it was probably not far off the time that you did there. So you've ridden round that route in probably the equivalent time that it took us to drive it. So that just puts in perspective.
And I stopped for a teammate's puncture.
That's rubbing it in now. That's rubbing it in now.
So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, obviously that was a super fast time, and I've got a few kind of questions there. I mean, obviously, how did the course play a part? What was your preparation like? And just to sort of take a quote from a well-known cycling pundit, Adam Blythe, did you just have diamonds in the legs? Was it one of them days where you absolutely nailed it? But it was a fantastic performance. So tell us a little bit more about your Dirty Reiver this year.
So Dirty Reiver I was using as kind of like a practice run before the tracker to like test out my fueling, test out my like race day prep, see how my body responds to that kind of distance. Because I'd done the 130 the past 2 years. So I hadn't done the 200 before. And I'd only heard the rumours that it only gets hillier after 130k. And they were correct. They were very correct. Very accurate. But yeah, so I was using it as like kind of a practice run. It also was like very early. It's very early in the season. So like I didn't know how I knew I was feeling fit, but I didn't know how that would play out in an actual race scenario, or race with inverted commas scenario. But yeah, I did feel really good during, and I think especially the first few hours, like I was going really well early on. I definitely started to suffer later. But yeah, I like worked with another girl on the Ribble Collective. We were in a little group, and we managed to we accidentally dropped the rest of the group on a climb. And I realized, and I turned to her and I was like, just so you know, we've dropped everyone. I was like, either we slow down and then we ride with them, or we just keep. I was like, we're at a point now where the gap's big enough. Like, let's just go, you and me. And she just kept going. So I was like, right, we're going. I'm going to spend a long day with her.
Yeah. So you obviously got to know each other quite well then.
Yeah, it was a real bonding experience. I think particularly because she reached some. Well, I mean, we both took it in turns, reaching some lower points, because it is a really long, hard day on the bike. And she like turned to me at one point and went, "Do you have any jelly babies?" And I was like, "I do have some jelly babies." So I was like passing her jelly babies, and we were like passing some words of like morale boosting. We separated for a bit. We separated for a bit up a longer climb towards the end, and then we like regrouped again, and then we finished together, which was really nice.
So talking about jelly babies and things, what did you fuel on going round?
That's actually a really good question, because I'd never fueled off sweets before, but I decided to try sweets for the first time at Dirty Reiver. I didn't only fuel off jelly babies, but I did have a significant amount of jelly babies. I had a lot of OT super gels, like a lot of gels.
Right.
I ate one hot cross bun. At one moment, I remember like being like having a slightly less intense moment and being like, this is the moment for the hot cross bun. What else did I eat? Card powder in bottles.
Is that a favourite of yours, hot cross buns, if you're going to have something that's not sports nutrition, so to speak?
Yeah, hot cross buns is like my go-to real food.
Yeah,
ride nutrition. Like if I'm out for an endurance ride at home, I mean, have you ever looked at the macronutrients in a hot cross bun?
No.
They're great.
Are they really?
Buns, yeah, it's like, so like normally, like I think it's about 35 grams of carbs, and you've got a few grams of protein and really low fat. So good for riding.
Yeah, right. The top tip from Maddy there. Yeah.
I have to confess, Maddy, that I watched we watched you on your YouTube channel and started making your rice cakes like not that long ago. Maybe we're going to ditch them and start with hot cross buns.
Yeah, hot cross buns, so easy, really portable. The only thing I would say, the negative to hot cross bun is it's quite big. So, and this is really gross, but I like squeeze them down.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have ridden with hot cross buns in my back pocket. Now, when I've taken them out of the bag or anything they're in, they've gone hard because it's the heat from my skin has in a way just sort of cooked the outside of them. Did you get that?
Oh, I don't think it was hot enough at Dirty Reiver for that.
Yeah, right, okay. It's maybe good for me then. Maybe I'm trying too hard.
Yeah. Just going back to your a really nice story there you have. Obviously you rode with somebody and it just goes to show that even at that real top end of an event, you know, people are having that social interaction and that making those friends and bonding and sharing, and I think that's a really nice thing about gravel. You know, you don't often see that so much in other sorts of sports. So yeah, that's kind of really nice. So were you with a group of men at that point, or had you shelled them out as well?
So it was just me and Amelia for like a long period of time. I think at one point we were with another guy, and we actually found a male teammate of ours at the final feed.
Yeah.
And we rode next to him for a bit, and he was like, "I'll shout some encouragement." We rode with him for a little bit.
Before dropping him.
We didn't drop him, but he was pretty cooked. He was, which is why we caught him. But yeah, no, we didn't really ride in a group. I mean, when we were in a group, it was us, another girl, and a guy.
Yeah.
It was really small, but I was in a good group of men early on that I managed to hold on to for a fair chunk. And then I reached a point where I was like, no, I can't hold on to the men's wheels.
Which was your worst point going round then? Can you remember it?
My worst point?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good question. I think I was just suffering to like not right at the end. At the end, I actually like got second wind. I definitely was feeling quite good at the end. I think it was before the last feed. There was like a hill. It was I dropped from Amelia at the last long hill. I just had a moment of like, oh no, I've still got like 70k to go. I think I've gone too hard. I also looked, and you should never do this, but I looked at what my average power was up until that point, and I was like, this is too many watts. I don't think I can sustain this.
And so you were able to share the magic number.
The magic number. Well, so normalized power 5 hours in was 230, which is like, yeah, per kilo, that's like a lot.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it was 203 normalized. I remember that. So for 8 hours. So I did significantly ease off from that.
That's some very good going. That is brilliant. Is that normalized power for that? That is amazing.
Yeah. No, it was a lot. And I was wondering at the end, because I was like, oh, is that overeating? But I think I saw Amelia's, and hers was like, she's a bit taller than me. Hers was a bit more. So I was like, no, this sounds right. I think we just did a ridiculous amount of watts that day.
Yeah.
Good on you. Fueled by hot cross buns.
Yeah, well, only one actually in that race.
Okay.
So the low points, let's just talk about those a minute. What's your tactic? Okay, we all have them. We all probably approach them in different ways. And I'm just interested to hear from you, you know, kind of what is your strategy? I mean, you know, an event that long, you're going to have the ups and downs, and it's sometimes it's how you deal with those downs that can be so crucial as to like whether you finish or how you finish. So do you have a plan? Do you just kind of grin and bear it, or you know, what do you do?
I think in those moments you just kind of have to like have a little bit of self-talk and like convince yourself to keep going. Sometimes the thing I find hardest in gravel racing is if you're in a good group and then you do get gapped for some reason, or like you lose a wheel, I think that's really hard. And I've like taught myself a tactic recently, especially in like the higher intensity, the start of races, where if I find myself losing a wheel, I like will count down from 10 to get back to the wheel. So I'll see the wheel and like see the gap, and I'm like, I'm giving myself 10 seconds to get back on that wheel. And I'm like, I just have to push for 10 seconds. And if I haven't got to the wheel in 10 seconds, then I can start the timer again. And then if I haven't got there in 20, then normally I just go, okay, I'm just gonna go.
Because for a lot of people perhaps listening to this, you know, that they might not realize, you know, how much of a saving energy wise it is to actually be on that wheel. And you know, there's all sorts of kind of figures, you know, sort of thrown around. But yeah, how much do you notice, Maddy, when you actually get on a wheel? What is the difference? Is there much on gravel?
I think there's less on gravel than on the road. There definitely is less on gravel, which is why I love it, because people can't just sit in there not pushing many watts and stay in the group. It depends also if you're like descending or climbing. I think climbing has like a significantly less of an impact, like drafting has significantly less of an effect. But on the flat, I think there can be like a decent benefit. Like sometimes you can sit in there and really save some energy. But also sometimes I find if I'm in a group and then someone like flicks an elbow and makes me take a turn, I realize how hard it is on the front.
Flicking an elbow, what's that mean?
So to signify to the person behind you that you're gonna like move out the way and let them kind of move forward and then take a turn, you like flick your elbow. So you like just like lift your elbow up to kind of be like, come on, like you move forward. It's more something some people do on the road, but people do it on gravel.
Yeah.
Or and they then shout at you.
And then what, you just move across the track and that person comes through?
Yeah, you just like the person in front moves across and you come through. I actually had someone shout at me in Dirty Reiver being like, come on, you're the pro, sit on the front. Hilarious. So that's another tactic.
And did you? Or did you ignore them?
No, I completely ignored them. Didn't make any conversation back. And then the guy in our group turned around and went, you should moan about this on your YouTube channel.
It's not to say there's some banter going on out on the course.
Yeah, there tends to be.
So going back to Reiver again then, so any special prep this year? Anything that you did that was different? Anything you were trying that, you know, you kind of that's different, or anything that you've learned in particular from the event this time around?
Oh, that's a good question. I did
jelly babies. Jelly babies.
Sure. We've learned a lot.
Good. I actually, so when I race and I'm like racing at home or somewhere like familiar, I will always make rice for breakfast. And I actually did bring rice up to like a rice cooker up to Dirty Reiver, and I made rice in my hotel room. And I actually think that made a huge difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
so having rice the morning of was a really good fueling technique. I'm trying to think what I properly warmed up, which I think makes a big difference because the start's so hard. And I properly went out and warmed up beforehand. And like normally for a 200k race, I'd maybe be like, I think I'm riding enough today, I don't need to warm up. But actually you do need to warm up for something that's going to start really intense. And the pace at the front was quite brisk, was it? Yeah, the pace at the front was particularly brisk at the beginning. I think there's a lot of people now who come to an event like Dirty Reiver and are like racing it.
But it's not a race though, is it?
No, it's not a race.
Just a challenge.
Just people race it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people do come to all events and you know, they want to challenge themselves, they want to do the best time they can. But it's just important to recognize that, you know, it isn't officially a race. So
so you used the Dirty Reiver as a training for the tracker.
Yeah.
Now the tracker you came 8th in 360. So it's obviously it worked.
Yeah, no, I was happy. I actually was really happy with that result. I mean, last year I came 5th, but the field this year versus last year was so much, like the depth of the field was so much stronger. So actually 8th this year was more impressive than 5th last year. It's just one of those things where like on paper someone will be like, oh, you did better last year, but actually like 2 of the girls who beat me last year beat me this year. and everyone else that was in front of me this year that wasn't there last year, and they were like incredibly strong riders.
Yeah.
It looked like a pretty hot field.
Yeah.
So they with that, obviously it's 360 kilometers. Am I correct there? 360 kilometer.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It was 345 this year.
That's not a lot between friends, though, is it? When you're going around that far, and to be able to get 8th on there is stunning. How long after the Reiver was it?
It was 2 weeks after. Last year, it was only 1 week after, which is why I did the 130, because I think 200 would have cooked me. But it was 2 weeks after. But I think that was a perfect, kind of like training load before. I actually did, to be fair, I went to Girona straight after Reiver, and I did a 9-hour ride, like not like 6 days before the tracker. It's pretty close.
Yeah. In fact, you didn't go straight to Spain because you went down to London Marathon, I believe.
Oh yeah, I did. So the evening of Dirty Reiver, I didn't actually drive. I got someone to drive me home because I don't think my legs would have worked. So I went home. I got home at 1 a.m. and I was up at 7 to go and support the London Marathon.
Good effort. And who was running in that?
My partner was not the same kind of approach. It was more like a get round approach rather than a like racing it. But yeah, I actually think supporting that was as tiring, if not more tiring, than Dirty Reiver.
Well, to do that and then shoot all the way down to London, support somebody down there, that's got some energy, and that'd have burnt some calories just doing that as well. So you've done well just doing that.
I think I walked 20 kilometers, and I said to someone, I was like, gosh, I really didn't like plan this well. Like I rode 200 kilometers the day before. It's like, this is really hard.
It is. The London Marathon need to move their date, and then more people can do it. Yeah, it's fine. Simple then. We'll get in contact with them, Brian, ask them to move it.
Maybe next year I should just do both.
Yeah, that would be impressive.
That would be really impressive, the double. There are some gravel events in America that have a trail running event on like the other day of the weekend. Maybe you guys could do that.
Who knows?
Who knows? Keep an eye.
Very cool.
So, just want to very quickly chat to you about tyres. So you've been the new Panaracer X1 tyres. Probably was the Reiver one of your first events with them?
That is a very good question. I think I took them out to Girona to train on them, and then Reiver probably would have been the first time I ever raced them.
Yeah. And what was your impressions? What did you think?
I love them. Like well, firstly, they feel fast. I mean, it's quite hard to quantify that unless I like did a little experiment and I went out and did like a certain segment at a certain power and timed it. But they feel really fast.
Yeah,
the grip's good. I definitely noticed that, and I'm just like really confident on them, which is the most important thing. Like at Reiver, you do have some quite fast descents, and there was no moment where I felt unsafe or like I was at risk of slipping out at all. Like I felt really confident in them. And as like we briefly touched on, no punctures, which is all one can ever dream of for a gravel race.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I do know that, one of the things that I'm, very interested to sort of just find out about is people's idea on kind of tyres and punctures, and because we do get a lot of people puncturing in gravel, and I'm just wondering whether it's tyre choice or whether it's tyre pressure or whether it's a combination of both or whether it's just down to how people ride. I don't know if you've got an opinion on that. You've obviously been riding over the last few months on those tyres. You haven't had do you think it's just the tyres, or do you think there are other factors as well?
I think there are actually quite a few factors that come into it. And I have to say, I do notice that the same people seem to puncture every time. Like it definitely seems to be common for some people, and like other people never puncture. I think there's an element of weight that comes into it. Like if you're a small woman, I think your risk of puncturing is just automatically quite a bit lower because you're just putting less force on the tire. There's also riding style. Like I ride very conservatively and very carefully when it comes to like a rough section, because the idea of puncturing I find very stressful, and I just wouldn't take a risk. Like, I'd prefer to drop from a group because I've like been careful and cautious on a sharp descent, whereas I know people who would ride like a lot more aggressively through a section that they maybe shouldn't ride that aggressively through, and then they risk a puncture or puncture. So I also think like I ride inserts, which definitely gives me more confidence, whether that really does make a difference.
It's funny because as you were saying, going downhill, you're quite conservative. Ian Boswell was saying exactly the same thing as well, that he just knocks it back a little bit to get down to be able to save that time not having a puncture. So
it makes such a difference. Like, if you puncture that can completely wreck a race. I mean, you can have a puncture that completely like writes off a tire, and then you need to get picked up. So why save a couple of seconds taking a risk?
I agree with that.
In a puncture, you can be losing minutes, sorting out and minutes, or even ending your event. I definitely think that just easing back a little bit. I mean, obviously there might be a time when you don't ease back if it's the final descent and you're in the lead, and then all of a sudden, you're thinking, right, well, this is time to just throw caution to the wind a bit. But that's definitely a good tip, Maddy. So obviously, we're super keen as organisers to try and encourage more women to come to Panaracer Dirty Reiver, and just encourage more women to get involved in the sport of gravel. Are there any particular barriers, you think, to women coming to ride events, or is there anything you can offer up to just sort of offer up as tips to people that are maybe thinking, looking over from road racing and thinking, oh, well, it'd be nice to have a go at gravel. You've obviously made the step. You're obviously doing very well and successful, and you're competing at a very high level. But just for women in general, any thoughts you have on that?
I wonder if the mass start puts people off sometimes, that like women starting with men. So like you guys had this year where you could start within a certain window. I think that sort of thing reduces that barrier, because then if women are put off by the mass start, they can start later, because I think it is quite intimidating starting with the front man. And the intensity is obviously higher if you're starting with the guys as well. I think gravel is pretty good for equality in terms of like men and women racing, and especially at like the like more competitive end of it, you get the same amount of coverage as the men. Like, that's something that I've really noticed. Like, I've never noticed inequality apart from last year at World Champs, when the women's race wasn't televised and the men's was. Apart from that, like most races that I've done, the distance is always the same for men and women. And the coverage is normally exactly the same, and the prizes is normally exactly the same. So
that's good.
It's way better than road in that respect. But I do think it's just encouraging women to do it, because they're definitely like there is more participation in terms of like men than women. But then if you look at cycling, there are way more men who ride bikes than women. So it's just like, I think it's just proportionally the same.
No, that's a very interesting point, actually, looking at that, from the fact that there probably are less women ride bikes generally, but a similar proportion of them are actually coming to events. I suppose never really thought about it like that. So, but that's very interesting about the starts. I do know at Reiver this year we had one of our female riders was super anxious about getting going and clipping in with all other riders around her. So we just sort of stopped the rest of the group and let her roll off by herself. But that's a really valid point. So something for us to think about. Right. Well, thank you very much for talking Dirty Reiver. What's next for you then, Maddy?
So next is this rogue gravel trip for 4 days to Spain for a wedding, which is not a gravel training camp, it is a wedding, but I will ride. The next actual cycling focused thing is an altitude training week in Miranda, and then fly straight over to Kenya. I've got a UCI gravel race in Kenya, and then the migration gravel race, and that's like my target race for this year. So I said to my coach at the beginning of this year, because obviously you can't target every race that you do because that's physically not possible from like a performance perspective, that migration gravel race and the tracker were like my two main targets.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. There's a couple of really strong girls doing it, so I think it's gonna be a really exciting race. And it's 4 days, which I love stage racing. I think it just adds an extra element to it. Like, you have to be smart, you have to be really on top of everything.
Yeah.
And it's literally camping in the middle of nowhere in Kent.
That's like a real adventure, though, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's not just about, you know, as you alluded to when we first started chatting, it's not just about the actual riding, it's about the experiences that take part around that. And you know, you were mentioning that in some of the events that you've done, where you've been to really nice places and you learn about the culture, and even down to, you know, your experience at the Reiver, where you're riding with somebody and you're sharing a few stories and sharing a packet of jelly babies and egging each other along. And I think that's what's quite nice about gravel, is it just goes beyond the riding itself, and it sort of spreads out into a more holistic experience, if you like. So it's I think that's really nice. So we wish you all the best with Migration Gravel and those.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we'll see you at Gravel Rocks, which is one of our events coming up in July. And hopefully we'll see you there. So Maddy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'm excited for this Gravel Rocks. This is brand new, isn't it?
Yeah, new this year. It's going to be really good. Really excited about it. It'll be excellent. Be right. Yeah, be good.
It's also an interesting style because it's timed stages, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
See, I love that, because then people can't pre-prepare.
But we'll give you all the information when you get to the start of that stage. But you know.
So you get to the start of the stage and it's like, this is a 3-kilometer hill climb. Go.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So I mean, hopefully we're kind of ticking some boxes. We got our heads together and tried to think, what is it that excites people about gravel? And there's definitely that social element, as we've chatted about. There's definitely that sense of an adventure, which again we've chatted about, and there's definitely that sense of a little bit of competition, which again we've chatted about. And those three things, we think, are what makes gravel so special. So we've tried to put them together in a weekend of cycling. So Friday we have Gravel Rocks in the Dark. So we've got we've got one night stage. It's a 10k stage with 2 little time segments on it, and you will need lights because it's going to be we'll probably start at about 9:30, 9:45ish, thereabouts. And then the Saturday stage is a longer one, and with the Saturday stage there's no course marking, so there will be that element of finding your own way a little bit and keeping your eye on where you're going, not just following sort of a breadcrumb. And then the special stages, you won't know where they are, but you might know about a little bit about them. So you'll just literally arrive at where the special stage is, and there'll be a little bit of information. It will actually be course marked. We don't expect you to race full gas just on a GPX unit, but so that will be marked. And we just think that kind of just makes it a really nice adventure. And North York Moors, there'll be Purple Heather, and it's just going to be great. So
sounds great. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And then when you finish, there'll be like a festival. We've got a DJ. There's going to be bespoke beer and a bespoke bar there for us and stuff around there. So, and all the brands will be there as well. So it's going to be a really good cycling experience with all that stuff that Brian just said, and then you can all celebrate at the end as well.
It's also good because if I'm tired from the Africa block, I only have to do hard efforts in the time sections.
Yeah, that's the one. And as long as you're not racing or going down to London the next day, you're fine.
Yeah.
Right, Maddy, thank you very much. And all the best in your up and coming events. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Good luck. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Well, Neil, it's always great to talk to Maddy. She's so full of enthusiasm for gravel riding, and what a story. She's obviously got some great form to complete the 200-kilometer Dirty Reiver in that sort of time. Is obviously testament to the fact that she's certainly put in some hours, don't you think?
Yeah, and she's on about a normalised power with Watson, and I'm saying it again. We said it with Ian Boswell as well, but the amount of power that they can just put out and on a regular basis over 7-8 hours is stunning. It really is stunning. And that's a gift in itself. It really is.
Yeah, and yeah, some good tips to pass on to people as well. I was quite taken with the hot cross buns idea. I will go back and pull a packet of those off the shelf next time I'm passing and see what the nutrients are like in there. What about you, Neil? What did you think from some of the tips that she passed on?
To start off with the hot cross buns, I've started that already. I've started eating them already. I just need to be able to ride my bike next. But I'm in training for that, eating hot cross buns. The big thing that it took from me was, again, same as Ian Boswell, that they're knocking it back on descents to make sure that they don't puncture, they don't fall off, and they're looking at the long game and the overall time of the event rather than just blatting it down on the descent. And I think that was really interesting, was that from both of them, really was.
Yeah, I would agree. Certainly looking back at racing days, that you've got to be just erring on the side of caution on those descents. You can puncture, you can damage your wheel very, very easily, and then you're going to lose way more time than if you just back off a bit. So
but it's good fun though, going downhill fast, and we all know that, and that's that fine line between what are we there for, and if you're there for that time or you're there for a blast. And that's that thing is depending, and when there's other people around you as well, it's definite thing is just to knock it back, because you will only end your event, you might end up somebody else's event as well.
Yeah, and give each other some space as well. Gravel is very different to riding on the road. Riding on the road, you do pretty much ride elbow to elbow and wheel to wheel. But I think on gravel, you know, there's a different mindset. We need to kind of get people thinking that space is premium. So
before we move on to this next thing, the one thing that I did notice this time, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because we have had a whole podcast on it, but there were so many people with really, really hard tyres. That it ends up like on marbles. So guys, if you're listening to this and you've got hard tyres on there, just let some pressure out and play on lower pressure tyres. It does give you more grip and it is faster overall. Yeah, that's it. I'm not saying any more about that.
And try it before event day. Don't just turn up for your event and start letting your pressures out. Then give it a try beforehand. So so nice that Maddy's going to come to Gravel Rocks, which is one of our new event this summer. Really looking forward to seeing her, and quite a few of them actually. Notable riders are signing up for Gravel Rocks. So I thought we'd just maybe explain a little bit more about it. It is a very new format. We've had a lot of people sort of getting in touch saying, can you just tell us a little bit more? Can you tell us a little bit more? Well, there is quite a lot of information on the website at www.gravelrocks.cc. And date of the event, Neil, putting you on the spot.
You are, yeah. It's the 12th to the 14th of July, which is in Helmsley, North York, and Moors National Park. And to be honest, I think I'm more excited about this event than any other event, because I know the people that are coming, it's going to be such a celebration, festival, riding, social riding. I'm just really looking forward to it. I really am.
Yeah, so obviously mid to early July in the North York Moors is going to be pretty stunning anyway. We're going to have the whole of the purple moors to look forward to. So if nothing else, that's going to be definitely worth taking a few pictures of for sure. So the event, as you said, based out of Duncan Park in Helmsley, and it's a Friday to Sunday event. And I think what we have tried to pull together here is all of the things that we think that really make gravel, make gravel such a fantastic cycle event. So we've looked at the social side of it. We've looked at the getting out there and having an adventure side of it. And we also thought a little bit about, just giving a nod to those people that like to, maybe just crank the pedals a bit and see if they can go a little bit quicker. So bringing together all of those three things into one weekend. And that's enabled us to come up with the concept of Gravel Rocks. So Friday, what's happening on Friday, Neil?
It's going to be Gravel Rocks in the dark. So we're going to be having a 10K stage or approximately a 10K stage at the moment. And within that stage, there's going to be 2 time segments, which are going to be in the dark, hence gravel rocks in the dark.
Okay.
And you're not going to know about where these sections are until you come to them. So we're not going to put out on the website or anything before the event and saying it's a 2 kilometre, it's 200 metres climbing. You will only know where it is and what's coming at the start of that thing when you get there. Did that make sense, Brian?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so that's the adventure part of it. Is that you don't really know where your special stages are going to be. So, yeah, for those people that maybe don't have a decent set of lights, we have got exposure lights as supporting the night event, and they will actually hire you a set of lights for the evening. So a great opportunity there to try out some of Exposure's fantastic lighting products, and also no excuse. You can't say, "Oh, can't do it because I haven't got any lights." Yeah,
but yeah, that's Friday. Saturday. Tell us what's happening on Saturday, Brian.
So Saturday is the big day. It's the big adventure day. So Saturday's course isn't marked. So all of it's on GPA, and so there's an element of finding your own way, keeping your eye on where you're going. However, we have got out and about on a 75, 80 kilometre course. We have got 4 or 5 special stages. And you won't know where the special stages are until you arrive there, when they will be marshalled and signed. So your special stages are actually signed with arrows, because I don't expect you to race flat out just on a GPX. That would be carnage. So yeah, special stages. There will be a range of different terrains, and it is very much geared towards drop bar bikes, gravel bikes, but you can come on an e-bike if you like, or a mountain bike. Either will do. I just think that the terrain is definitely more suited towards sort of gravel. So yeah, I
agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. And then the last stage, does that last stage finish anywhere specific, Brian?
We're slap bang right in the middle of the event village. So on the Saturday, we actually will start with a prologue ramp. You'll set off from the event village and do a very short special stage, and then you will actually do a finished special stage, and that finishes within the event arena itself. We will have a feed station. I think Cliff, one of our brands, are going to be supporting the feed station, and our special stages again are going to be supported by different brands.
So with it being a race, with this 6 or 7, we're still deciding on that last little one there, but we'll keep it as a secret. You never know. Is it a combined time of those that win, or is it individual ones? What happens there, Brian?
Yeah, we've got a full range of classes. So we've got pro through all the normal age classes, and your combined times of all the special stages will give you your overall ranking, and that will be the decider as to whether you will be standing on our podium. And on the Sunday, we have got some social rides. We've got some of our ambassadors are going to be leading some social rides. We'll have 2 or 3 different social rides going on. And hopefully it'll be a nice opportunity for people to explore the area to maybe slightly quieter pace.
And this is where our job gets really hard as well, because we're out sussing some of the routes up on Wednesday and Thursday, aren't we, Brian?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we are. Putting together some information for families, because, if you've got families, bring them along. There'll be a free pack for little activities in the and around the estate. Lots for people to do over the weekend.
Cool. That's excellent. I can't wait for that. So that's us then, is it? Is that done for another podcast?
Yeah, I think so. And so let's see what happens on the next of the Panaracer Dirty Reiver Diaries.
Cheers, Neil. Take care. Happy gravelling.